The disappearing act. No one notices. You follow the rules. You don't cause trouble. You show up, meet expectations, keep the peace. On paper, you're doing everything right, but lately, you've felt off. Not broken, not even sad. Just distant from something you can't name. You smile, you nod, you check the boxes, but inside, there's a dull ache. A question you keep pushing away. Where did I go? Here's the truth no one tells you. Losing yourself doesn't feel like chaos. It feels like silence. It feels like getting so good at pretending, even you forget you're pretending. It looks like achievement. Like being easy to work with. Like knowing what everyone else wants before you even ask what you want. And it's praised, respected, rewarded. But what if the life you built to keep it together is the very thing that's quietly erasing you? What if your habits, the over-explaining, the constant smiling, the way you always say yes before you even pause, aren't personality traits, but symptoms? What if the exhaustion you carry isn't from working too hard, but from performing too much? No one teaches us this, but we learn it young. Being liked is safer than being real. So we start shrinking, editing, numbing, until we become what others need, and forget what we needed in the first place. And we call it maturity. We call it responsibility. But under the surface, it's self-erasure. So if you've been feeling disconnected from yourself, like you're living on autopilot, like your days are full but you feel emotionally empty, this isn't in your head. It's not a phase, it's not a mindset problem. It's a pattern, a survival strategy, a psychological loop that started long ago. But here's the thing about loops. The moment you notice you're in one, you've already taken the first step, out. The invisible process of self-erasure, you don't lose yourself all at once. It happens in pieces, quietly, subtly. You don't even notice at first. It's not one dramatic moment. It's a slow burn. 1,000 small silences. 1,000 little compromises. You laugh when something hurts. You say, it's fine when it's not. You nod along when your body wants to say no. Each time, a little part of you folds inward. Until eventually, you forget who you were before you started performing. In trauma theory, this process is called fawning, the survival response most people never talk about. When fight, flight, or freeze don't feel safe or available, your nervous system finds a fourth option: become what others want, adapt, please, disappear into the role that will keep you protected. You stop asking, what do I want? And start asking, what will keep me accepted? You don't express your truth. You scan for what's safest to say. Pete Walker, one of the leading voices on complex trauma, calls fawning the lost trauma response. It doesn't look like panic or breakdown. It looks like perfectionism, over-explaining, avoiding conflict at any cost, hyper-focusing on others' moods while ignoring your own. It's not kindness. It's fear wearing a smile. Attachment theory explains why. If love in your early environment was conditional, based on performance, silence, or emotional compliance, then self-expression became a risk, not a right. You learned to make yourself small to stay close. You learned that to be connected, you had to be easy to love, even if it meant leaving yourself behind. This is how self-abandonment begins. Not from weakness, but from wisdom. Your body sensed what was safe and adapted. You prioritized external approval because internal truth was never mirrored. You stopped being honest about what you needed because it never changed anything anyway. So you shaped yourself around what others expected. And you called it personality, maturity, strength. But underneath that adaptation is a buried identity, a version of you that never got to speak, never got to choose, never got to rest. You may think of yourself as someone who's easygoing, empathetic, low maintenance, but ask yourself this: is that who you are or who you had to become? Because the danger of fawning is not just that you lose your voice, it's that you forget you ever had one. Normal habits that signal you're losing yourself. Most people don't realize they've lost themselves because the habits that signal self-loss are often praised, encouraged, called responsible, kind, productive. But underneath the surface, these habits often reveal something else. A nervous system stuck in performance mode, a self shaped by fear, not freedom. Let's break them down. Chronic over-explaining. You feel the need to justify everything. Your decisions, your feelings, your boundaries, even your silence. You don't just say no. You write a 3-paragraph essay explaining why it's not that big of a deal. This is a hallmark of fawning and hypervigilance. When you've learned that your needs might be judged, rejected, or dismissed, you start trying to control the outcome by explaining your way into acceptance. Psychologically, this is about survival. If I say it clearly enough, they won't leave. If I over-explain, they won't think I'm selfish. But every time you do this, you reinforce a hidden belief. Your truth alone isn't enough. It has to be softened, padded, diluted. Never saying what you really want. When someone asks where you want to go, you say, "I'm good with whatever." You always defer. You avoid expressing preferences. Not because you don't have them, but because somewhere along the way, you learned that your wants are dangerous. That asking might make you look needy. That desire leads to disappointment. This is a classic result of attachment anxiety and childhood suppression. When your early experiences taught you that expressing needs caused tension, or worse, rejection, you began to equate self-expression with risk. So you shrink your wants. You make yourself easy to accommodate. But inside, resentment builds. Not because others ignore you, but because you've been trained to ignore yourself. Constant smiling and joking, especially when you're hurting, you're the one who lightens the mood. Makes the joke, smiles at everything, even when your chest feels like it's collapsing. This isn't just a personality trait, it's masking emotional discomfort. Paul Ekman's display rules theory explains how we learn to suppress authentic emotions in favor of socially accepted ones. In trauma-informed therapy, we call this affect suppression. When you appear okay to avoid triggering disconnection, the nervous system doesn't register authenticity as safe. It registers acceptance as safe, so it performs what others find easiest, to digest. But over time, this robs you of emotional intimacy, because no one gets to see the real you. Feeling guilty for resting or saying no, you cancel plans and immediately feel like a bad person. You sit down to rest and your chest tightens. You feel like you need to earn stillness. This is the trauma of internalized capitalism mixed with nervous system dysregulation. When rest was not modeled as safe, or worse, when resting was punished or shamed, your body associates stillness with danger. Polyvagal theory explains this well. Your body stays in a sympathetic, fight-freeze state, even when it's time to come down. So even though your body is exhausted, your brain is screaming, "Keep going," or something will break. It's not laziness you fear. It's losing the illusion of control. Living on autopilot, but not feeling alive, you're not falling apart. You're just flat, numb, empty. You wake up, work, scroll, reply, smile, sleep, repeat. On the outside, nothing's wrong. On the inside, nothing feels right. This is the cost of long-term self-abandonment. You've spent so long adjusting, pleasing, performing, that your brain has forgotten how to make intentional choices. You don't ask, "What do I want today?" You ask, "What's expected of me?" This is dissociation in disguise, a survival strategy where you stay so busy or compliant that you never have to confront what you really feel. But emotional flatlining is not peace. It's disconnection. Not from the world, from yourself. None of these habits make you bad. They make you wise. They're adaptive responses from a time when staying connected meant staying silent. But they're not permanent. They're not your truth. They're just echoes of a version of you that was trying to stay safe in a world that didn't know how to hold your full humanity. And noticing them? That's the beginning of the return. What causes this pattern? The roots of invisible self-loss. No one wakes up one day and decides to lose themselves. It's never a conscious choice. It's a slow adaptation, a quiet shaping that begins in environments where being yourself didn't feel emotionally safe. Childhood emotional neglect is one of the most overlooked causes. It's not always abuse. It's often the absence of attunement. You weren't hurt directly. You were simply not seen. Your emotions weren't mirrored, your truth wasn't reflected. So you learned to scan for cues instead of turning inward. You started shaping your reactions around what others wanted, because no one taught you how to trust what you felt. In those early years, you might have gotten love for being the easy one, the helpful one, the achiever, the peacemaker. That became your role. And like all roles, it came with a cost. You learned to perform love, not receive it. And when love feels conditional, self-abandonment becomes automatic. You cut off the parts of you that might threaten connection, anger, need, sadness, and call it maturity. Attachment theory shows us that if connection in your early relationships depended on staying small, agreeable, or emotionally low maintenance, then the nervous system will default to one strategy: fawn to survive. Your body learns, if I'm good enough, they'll stay. Not because you're manipulative, but because as a child, being alone wasn't just sad. It was terrifying. And this conditioning doesn't stop in childhood. It gets reinforced by systems that reward obedience over selfhood, schools that praise compliance, families that equate emotional control with strength, jobs that see burnout as dedication. The message is everywhere. Don't be difficult. Don't be messy. Don't need too much. So we start internalizing that being good equals being safe. We suppress the wild, the emotional, the intuitive parts of us, and trade them for being pleasant, productive, predictable. We build our worth around how well we perform, not how deeply we feel, not how honestly we live. And this is how the world doesn't just silence you, it teaches you how to silence yourself. So when you find yourself saying, I don't even know who I am anymore, that's not failure. That's insight. That's the first honest moment in a long time. Because before we remember who we are, we have to first admit, I've been gone for a while. Coming back to yourself isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering what was buried. The version of you that existed before the edits, before the performance, before survival took over. Here's where you begin. Notice without judging. Start by observing. Gently, without trying to fix. Where in your life are you performing more than participating? Where do you feel tight, small, fake, overextended? These are clues, not flaws. Use mindfulness-based inquiry. Ask, who am I being right now, and why? Not from a place of shame, but of curiosity. The nervous system can't unlearn fear if your self-awareness feels like an interrogation. So make it a reunion, not a reckoning. Disrupt the fawn pattern safely. If you've spent your life prioritizing others' comfort, saying no will feel like betrayal, even when it's healthy. So don't start with the hardest boundaries. Start small. Say no to something low stakes. Let someone be mildly disappointed. Notice that the world didn't end. This is how you rewire your body's fear of disapproval, not through logic, but through experience. According to polyvagal theory, your nervous system learns safety not from thinking, but from felt repetition. Every time you set a boundary and survive the aftermath, your body learns. It's safe to honor myself. Somatic practices help here. Deep belly breaths, grounding touch, orienting exercises, all of them teach your body that it's safe to stay with yourself, even when someone else is uncomfortable. Reconnect with forgotten preferences. Self-abandonment teaches you to ignore your wants. Healing is about relearning how to want, not just react. Ask yourself, what did I stop doing that used to make me feel alive? Not what's productive, not what gets praise, just what feels like you. Go slow. Don't turn it into a task. List. Let joy feel light again. Let curiosity return. Try foods you used to love. Revisit music that made you feel something. Follow the smallest sparks. Aliveness lives there. Work with a trauma-informed therapist. If you've spent years shape-shifting to stay safe, some of this work can't be done alone, especially if dissociation, chronic people-pleasing, or emotional numbness are present. You're not broken, but you may need help untangling what's yours from what was survival. A good therapist will help you find the root. The first time you were told that your truth was too much, too loud, too inconvenient. And from there, they'll help you build a new relationship with your nervous system, one where safety doesn't mean silence, because here's the deeper belief that lives under all self-abandonment. If I show up as I really am, I'll lose connection. Healing is about proving that belief wrong, one safe relationship at a time, starting with the one you have with yourself.